Since I was 3 or 4 years old, just moments before I fell asleep, I regularly heard a feminine voice calling my name. It never occurred to me to answer or ask who was calling. I would accept it without answering or asking any questions, as I believe children of that age would do about most things in life. My first written message came when I was in high school. We were given a topic for an essay, the impacts of new technologies on modern man. As I started to write, a succession of sentences and ideas rushed into my mind. I quickly wrote them down to make sure I got them all. I was amazed at the content and the fast pace at which the ideas came. Not understanding the phenomenon, I took it as an inspiration or a stroke of luck and thought this was how authors wrote their books. The essay was selected to be read at the monthly high school debate and was then printed in our local weekly newsletter. The second time was in the early 70s. I was preparing for a final exam at the art school I was attending at the time. Again, ideas I hadn't thought of before came rushing in, surprising me with their content and logical structure. A few years later, in the mid-1970s, it happened a third time while I was preparing for an oral presentation at the theological seminary. As I was reading the required material, a success scion of fascinating ideas flowed into a well-structured presentation. After the presentation, one of the students asked me where I got these ideas from. I replied that, frankly, I didn't know. By the way, the grades on the 3 assignments were very good. Still, I considered it nothing more than inspiration or luck. It was not until the early 1980s that I discovered what channeling was. Since then, the messages have come regularly, at times successively for a month or two, and at others a year or more apart. This is still the case today. At first, I had mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, I was impressed by the phenomenon and the content. On the other hand, I wondered how I could be sure that this content wasn't just coming from my own mind. However, with time and experience, certain aspects of this phenomenon became clear. The first and most compelling aspect of the experience is that these communications came with an unmistakable and tangible presence of love. To this day, this is my clearest indication that they are coming from a source outside of myself and a higher spiritual realm. Then, the content comes rapidly, faster than I would normally write. Also, I don't know when a communication will take place or what the content will be. Finally, as I write it down, I often discover ideas and concepts I didn't know or think of before. In my case, the messages come in what is called telepathic transmission. In this form of communication, the content comes as a succession of phrases that rush into one's mind. Most of the communications in this compilation came in this manner. Some, however, come as a spiritual experience, complete with seeing, hearing, and living a vision. Seeing and hearing, here, refers to seeing and hearing with our spiritual senses. A living vision combines sensations, images, and sounds as much as phrases. Therefore, putting it into words can be a challenge. This is mainly because our vocabulary may not have adequate terms to describe the experience fully. That's also why uncommon terms may be used when conventional terms won't do. As for the timing, communications generally come at quiet times convenient for writing them down. However, there have been situations where communication came while I was driving or walking. In these cases, I was later helped to reconstruct the main points of the message. For almost 40 years, I wrote down most of the messages, like a dictation, with little of my own to say. Over time, however, this gradually evolved into an exchange in which I would answer the person's questions or respond to the content. With few exceptions, it was not until about 2019 that the communications became dialogues. Some messages express the communicator's heart, thoughts, or feelings about a particular subject. Since messages often raise essential questions about our existence and offer meaningful advice, some have been truly life-changing for me. Also, it's good to remember that this compilation is a segment of an ongoing communication. Therefore, while there is an evolution in the content and relationships, there is no real beginning or end as in a novel. God can relate to each of us as if we were His one and only child. We all have the ability and the privilege to communicate and experience this communion with our Creator. I wondered why this was happening in my life. But it wasn't until recently that I asked God this question. Here is the answer I received. My desire is to communicate in this way, and even more directly and intimately, with each and every one of my children. So, you see, this is nothing exceptional. This should be our natural way of life. As we can see in some of these exchanges, the key to this communion is in our hands. This is one of the reasons why I decided to compile about 40 titles in audio version in the hope that other people will benefit from them as much as I did. Therefore, while the content of this book has been channeled through a person, most of it is addressed to each of us as sons and daughters of God.